Hi, it's Paul from Retention Guru, and I just wanted to share some insights that I've had probably within well, it's definitely within the last 24 hours. So it's Monday morning. I've just got back from the gym. I finished training. I've had my coffee, and one of the things I like to do early in the day is to read for a while. I'm an avid reader, and I tend to do it first thing in the morning. And I was reading an article about behavioural economics. And what struck me was yesterday evening, early evening, after I'd had dinner, while I was waiting for my one of my favourite TV shows to come on the TV in the evening, I was sitting and I'm doing what everybody else does when they're bored. Now I'm scrolling through my phone. Well, I say everybody else. Maybe that's not true. But I was scrolling through my phone, and my favourite place to scroll first of all is LinkedIn. I want to see what friends and colleagues have posted over the weekend on LinkedIn. And I came across this article by Brian O'Rourke. And I know Brian, I like Brian. He's spoken at the Retention Convention. We get on really well and we share ideas. And I've even spoken on his podcast for him. But he presented this piece of information. It's about a 10-minute read about private equity and the amount of money they are pouring into gym software and payment portals for the gym industry. And what struck me about that when I first read it was the amount of money that's coming into the industry. But the thing that came up to me this morning was, as I was reading this article on behavioral economics, what I noticed was I was reading this element called false consensus bias, which is from the false consensus effect. And the false consensus bias is seeing one's own behavioural choices and judgments as relatively common and appropriate to existing circumstances. And what that basically means is we tend to make our choices around the things we think are true because we also think other people think it's true. So, an example would be if I track my workouts, it would be common using this approach, this bias, to think everybody else is tracking their workouts. Everybody's now tracking their workouts. If I were to do CrossFit, everybody's doing CrossFit. If I do Peloton, everybody's doing Peloton. It's very generalizing of an attitude or an opinion. But what it made me think was, having read Brian's article yesterday, was that there's all this talk about the industry's gone digital. There's lots of questions around, is there any future in bricks and mortar? But looking at what he's talking about in this article about the private equity firms, well, they're putting their money into technology to support bricks and mortar. So they obviously think there's some future in the bricks and mortar business. Now, the other element that I'm interested in is when I'm teaching behavior change courses, I'm always interested in, and I've taught a lot around what's called the reticular activating system. Now, the reticular activating system is part of your brain that notices things when you bring them to your attention. So if someone says, "Oh, everywhere you go, you see wrong side, you see Soul Cycle. Everywhere you go, you see golds. Everywhere you go, you see." The thing is, your brain then starts to pick up on those logos, that branding, and those images, and so you suddenly do notice those things. I know when my partner Ebony was pregnant with our son, suddenly every woman that I saw seemed to be pregnant. When I've got problems with my knee and my knee's in a cast, suddenly I see lots of people with their knees in a cast, not their knees in my cast. But I think it's really interesting to look at these different biases and these different concepts and think sometimes we're making decisions and we're making judgments about things based on what we think is true, not always what necessarily is true. So do I think, personally, there's a future for bricks and mortar? I certainly hope so. And yeah, I do. I do think there'll be that. Do I think we need to be cautious that sometimes we overgeneralize? Yeah, I think we need to do that as well. I've put the link to Brian's article down below. So if you want to go and read that, that's great. And what I would suggest is, if you're interested in this principle or this false consensus bias or the false consensus effect, that you go and look it up on Google and read about it. But it's certainly, for me, an interesting start to the week to think that the people I will talk to will think what they think is true, but also general. You know, is it worth pausing for a second and going, okay, let's test that a little bit. Let's explore whether that is actually true or that is just a perception. Listen, that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you and seeing you again soon. Take care.